Almost there. Hey everyone, my name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. You know, I'm supposing you probably don't want to watch the glare on my damn bald head all night long. So let's get started. This is the live recording of episode 655 of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me tonight, one of my cohorts in crime, Charlie Cook, riding shotgun with Charlie, and the new guy. We got to get him a red shirt. The new guy down here, John Anderson. He's the El Presidente of Sandhills Media. He's the guy behind the Get Off My Lawn podcast. So, and I got to say it that way because he capitalizes it. So if it's said as a shout, I got to do it as a shout, right? Or if it's
Get off my lawn.
There you go. There you go. We're obviously short of regular staff, and John, when I asked him if he would do it, said, well, I don't know if I have anything going tonight. I'll have to check with my boss, who, of course, is his other half. And she released him to do his thing, so maybe that's phrased wrong.
No, it's exactly true. I have to be home before midnight or else I turn back into a pumpkin.
All right, let me...
hold on. Which time zone?
Well, the only time zone that matters, Charlie.
Yes!
Right.
All right.
Tonight.
I want to remind everybody as we get started here, let me get this one up before we even think about. I got to come over here. There we go. Hit that button. Grass doesn't grow on a busy road, Paul. No, that's absolutely true. And it reminds me of a very dirty joke I'll tell the staff after we go off the air.
Nice.
And Woods, formerly PNW Woods, says Sandhill Sweetheart runs a tight ship. You know, having been a semi-regular guest on John's show on previously Thursday, now Wednesday nights shows, I can attest to that. So
yes, and Woods, she heard that. She's just over there at her producer's chair, and you got a giggle out of that, Woods.
All right. Well, let me get a show notes for this show up and get it adjusted so my old eyes can see it. I want to remind everybody, just as Woods did, if you want to comment on anything we're talking about, go ahead and comment on either the live Facebook, if you're watching on the Polite Society podcast Facebook page, that live video, or the live video on the YouTube channel. I'll get both those instances right away. If you're catching us anywhere else on OpsLens, on Getter, on Rumble, anywhere else that picks us up, go ahead and go to Twitter and tweet with the hashtag PS Podcast. I'll get those and we'll get them up right away as well. Excuse me. So, now that I'm into show notes and I'm at the right area, are we ready to fly, guys?
Let's do it.
All right. In that case, Massad Ayoob in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Massad Ayoob from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, March the 27th, 2023. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Charlie Cook, and on tonight's show, we will discuss what we know about the mass shooter in Nashville this morning.
I'm John Anderson, and in one of our DGUs, a good guy with a gun stops an armed robbery in Detroit. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 655 of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast starts right now. All right, it is Monday night. It is 7 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, the only time zone that matters. And that means this week it's time for the live version of the Polite Society podcast. Charlie, been a couple of weeks since you had and I want to, I've got some questions about last week, why you weren't here when we get past what you're going to say about what you've been doing, but what's been up since the last time you've been on the air with us, man?
I have been a busy bee working on a lot of stuff, and I always tell people I'm just trying to keep up. But last week I wasn't able to be here or on the Daily Bullet because I was attending a gun law listening tour that the state of Massachusetts was hosting. It's really a bit of a sham. I've taught a couple of Utah classes over the past few weekends. I attended the Gun Owners Action League annual meeting yesterday, and last week I was on Cam and Company with Cam Edwards.
All right, this listening tour. They were listening, my understanding is, but only if you were speaking from the side they wanted you to speak from, right?
Yeah, it was very the panel. It was supposed to be on guns and violence, and what the state is doing is they are doing these, they're calling it the Gun Law Listening Tour, and I'm calling it the Guns and ... The first time it was Guns and Mental Health. The second one was Guns and Domestic Violence. I think the next one is going to be Guns and Hunting, maybe Guns and Shooting. There was no one on the panel that was a firearm, I'm going to say a firearm expert, or anyone that represented the pro-gun side of anything. There was a chief of police, from a central part of the state. There were 3 women that work with women in different groups and different organizations, and they work with domestic violence survivors. And there was one doctor who was a pediatric surgeon that said he had to deal with gunshot wounds, and he said gunshot wounds are more fatal than other wounds that people get when they're committing suicide. And one of the ladies, this is where I was a little frustrated. One of the ladies was saying that she had a domestic partner who was a prohibited person, and he had a gun illegally, and they got into an argument. He threatened her with a firearm, threatened her and her kids, threatened to shoot them. And like there was part of me that's like, maybe you should, I don't know, date better people, like have something a little bit, have a more rigorous vetting process for the people that you get yourself involved with. And so it was a little frustrating to hear that. There were a number of red shirts there, not red shirts like John Anderson red shirts, but the Moms Demand crowd. And they go ahead.
I was just going to say, I kind of resent that everybody thinks I'm so expendable that I need to have a red shirt.
Well, what's funny is one of the guys from the Gun Owners Action League ended up wearing a red shirt. So they all went up to talk to him, and then they found out he was a pro-gun guy, and they just turned around and walked away. But a couple of them actually got up and spoke. It was balanced in that they would have an anti-gun person talk, and then they would find a pro-gun person, and then an anti-gun person and a pro-gun person, which was good. So it kind of kept things like it felt like it was balanced. There was one red shirt that came out, and she's like, we don't want to take anyone's guns away, but we want, universal background checks, stricter background checks. We want mandatory storage. We want magazine restrictions. We want to have, more gun-free zones.
More
we want to
than
have
they already have?
Yeah. So there was one gentleman that came out and they said that So I'm sitting in the row. I've got 4 DC Project gals to my left. I've got 2 guys from the Gun Owners Action League to my right. There's one buddy from my gun range up to my left. There's a couple guys from the gun range that are in the row behind us, and there's a few other gun people that I didn't know who they were. We didn't talk before or afterwards. But this gentleman got up and he's like, well, we need to have strong gun laws. He's like, in Florida, you don't have to have a permit to walk around with a gun. We all looked at each other. We're like, did Florida pass concealed carry, permitless carry since we've been here? Like, we haven't been here that long. And then he's like, I would like to know if somebody's got a gun and they're walking around Disneyland. And it was a little bit aggravating, but the DC Project gals, Carrie Ann Auclair and Renee Gagne, they got up and represented the DC Project side and the ladies side of things, which was great. They talked about the things that they're doing. John Green from the Gun Owners Action League got up and said, some of these red flag things are restrictions and it's ridiculousness. And then I got up at the end and I spoke too, and I said some of the things aren't true. And I said, if you really want to help women that are domestic violence survivors, they don't have a lot of money, so why don't you give them training for free? Not just training to get their license, but why don't you give them some self-defense training? Why don't you give them free licenses, and why don't you fast track their permits so they don't have to wait too much to get their LTCs? And then of course I mic dropped everything, and I was the last one to speak, and it felt great.
Awesome. Well, let's move on to John. John, I believe, now you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first time you're here as part of the staff, so to speak, as part of the commentary staff. So what I'm going to do is rather than introduce you, I'm going to put that burden on you. I'm going to have you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and your show and what you've been up to lately, man.
Absolutely. Thanks. My name's John Anderson. I run the Sandhills Media, social media pages, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. We're now on Rumble. We do, as Paul alluded to earlier, we do a weekly podcast live on Wednesday nights now at 8 p.m. Central Time. We call it the Get Off My Lawn podcast. That's kind of a long story, but I've for many years now I've been referring to myself as a grumpy old man. And several years ago, I turned to my wife and I said, at the rate that I am progressing into this grumpy old manhood, I'm only about 1 or 2 more idiots away from just walking out the door with my rifle and saying, "Get off my lawn." And so when it came time to name the podcast, that's what we came up with for the show. So we talk about some gun stuff or some Second Amendment stuff. We talk about a lot of other things as well, just really whatever I want to on a given night. And have some people on, some panelists most of the time, just kind of see where the conversation takes us. But we try to have a lot of fun. We try to make people think about some things that maybe they had never considered before, or think about things maybe in a way they had never thought about them before. So I do try to be thought-provoking with the topics. I'm also a firearms instructor. I just finished the first concealed handgun permit class of the year this weekend. Drove about 2.5 hours up the road to a place where I used to live and taught a class there. So that was a raging success, and I believe that will breed some more success up in that area. There just aren't that many instructors out there in north central, super rural Nebraska. Also a board member for Nebraska Firearms Owners Association and a volunteer there as well. And we've been super busy this session. Every year that comes along, there's another version of a permitless carry bill that gets introduced in Nebraska. This one has actually got some traction. It's gaining some momentum. There's a big push. And for those of you that are catching us live tonight and have an interest in Nebraska, the second round of debate for that bill, which is LB 77, is going to happen tomorrow, more than likely in the afternoon. They need to get through 4 hours of debate before they can call for a vote, and so that may or may not happen before they run out of time tomorrow evening. It may spill over into Wednesday morning, but 48 hours from now, we should know exactly how that vote landed, and if it got farther this year than it did last year. This is the part where it died last year, so we really want to get this one over the goal line this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to. Yeah, you mentioned the get off my lawn, and you got it. It kind of. My understanding, the way you were describing it, you got it from the movie Gran Torino. The reference. I could see. I guess I can't see so much the Clint Eastwood reference when I look at you, but I could certainly see Wilford Brimley.
Well, we'll take that. We'll take that. Get off my lawn early. Get off my lawn often.
All right. Let's, Susan. That leaves you and I. Anything in the personal news segment that you want to bring up, Susan?
That I want to bring up? What would I want to bring up?
It beats me. We're going to be talking about something good that happened in South Dakota in the news segment, but anything DC project related or anything else you want to bring up?
No. Oh, I have done a little bit of paperwork on. I'm still trying to get bylaws and everything written up for South Dakota Citizens Defense League, so we can start getting that together. There is no gun rights group in South Dakota. None.
Yeah.
South Dakota gun
Sure, there
owners,
is.
open
Her name
carry,
is Susan Lathrop.
nothing. If you do Second Amendment rights groups, whatever state, there's nothing that comes up in South Dakota. There's nothing here. So we thought we'd change that. So we're working on forming and bylaws and board of directors the South Dakota Citizens Defense League. It'll be formulated along the same lines of Virginia Citizens Defense, Connecticut, Arizona. We're taking those bylaws and adapting them a little bit and changing them to serve South Dakota.
Very cool.
That is way
Hey, Susan,
cool.
I want to give a quick shout out too, speaking of the DC project, to the newest state director, a new state director here in Nebraska, Nebraska Firearm Owners Association's very own Trish Harold, who is our organization's president, and now she's a DC project lady.
And she's supposedly coming up May 20th for our range day.
Perfect.
So you better be there too, mister. We
I
changed the date.
need to talk to you about that. We'll do that off the air.
Oh, man.
I may have signed up for a class 10 miles from here that Norm Hood is teaching all weekend, or 2 classes over the weekend.
All right. At least it's
Norm
a
Hood
valid
doesn't come to
excuse.
Nebraska all that often.
All right. We'll let it slide this time.
Well, and that's something we haven't done a range day. We did not do one last year, period, or the year before that because of my health issues. We still, after I had my stroke and my cardiac event, we still had a Masada Yub group class that was scheduled well before that happened, before my health challenges, that we went ahead and did. I'm going to say we, but it was mostly Susan. I showed up. I helped open the place, and that was about the end of what I could tolerate physically. And I kind of snuck off and got myself in a dark room and came back when it was time to close it up. And I did shoot the qualifier at the end of it, and I almost tied Charlie and Amanda, but I did all right. So we did not do a range day, and we did not do one last year, so we're going to be doing one this year, the first time in a couple of years. If you're going to be in or around the Sioux Falls, South Dakota area, this is actually going to be south of us in Beersford, is where the range is at. So if you're going to be in driving distance of that on May the 20th, there is a Facebook group that's set up for it. I do not remember the name of it, but there's a Facebook event. If you're friends with me on Facebook, shoot me a message. I'll make sure you're invited so that we can account for everybody that's going to be there and find out how much of a range we need to reserve.
Hey,
So, yes.
the Meg 40.
Yes.
Those people ate pretty darn good, didn't they?
They ate very darn well.
I was just going to say, I was waiting for you to finish. You guys are incredible hosts for courses and for range days, and you guys did a great job taking care of the people for I think for lunch, right?
Yep.
Some breakfast and some snacks and waters and whatever. You guys were awesome at that. That was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, and there's a reason behind that. And the reason is I've been hosting training up here in East Central South Dakota, Southeast South Dakota. Where I'm at, if you look at a map, you find where South Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa all meet, and you go west of there about 10 miles. That's my house. The range is about 10 miles north of me, and there's nowhere, and I mean nowhere, in this little town called Del Rapids that's open that you can get something in a reasonable amount of time and get back and eat. And,
There's the local gas station where you could get a Nugget microwave burrito.
or some gas station
Eat
sushi.
here and get gas too.
Gas station sushi. Or you can come to Meg 40 and I'll feed you subs and chips and breakfast is scrambled eggs and sausages and bacon and pancakes and we had a good time.
What I found out very early on in hosting all-day classes is people were great in the morning. They didn't necessarily bring their own lunch, and so by the time the afternoon came around, mistakes started happening. Mistakes that really shouldn't happen. And I got to thinking, my wife's an awesome cook. And if people had food in their stomach, maybe they wouldn't make so many errors in the afternoon. And that proved to be true after we tried it. So we've just kept doing it.
Yeah, it was really good. You guys are great.
So let's, before we take off to the news segment, I do want to remind everybody, as I reach over here and push a button, that we are on the Self-Defense Radio Network. We are a founding member. We are the founding member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. You can see us up there in the top left. Below us, Eye on the Target Radio, where if you were watching carefully yesterday, you saw Charlie Cook and John Petrolino make appearances, although not in voice. They were on there yesterday. Below that, Get Off My Lawn podcast by this John Anderson guy. Really good podcast.
I'm going to have to get you an updated logo here.
Yeah, there you go. We need to get we need to get that. But anyway, that's on there. There's a total right now of 15 podcasts with more to come. Let's see here. And before we go off, I've got one more comment I've got to get in here. I think we may have just had a new attendee pipe up. Woods says, "You had me at bacon." So Susan, are we gonna be serving bacon May the 20th?
Of course, I'll have bacon with me. I always have bacon with me.
All right. So Woods, if you can make it to South Dakota on the 20th of May, we got you covered, man. We got you covered.
I'll bring extra bacon for you, Woods.
All right. Let's do step aside to our first break. When we come back, we got to talk about it. There was a shooting in Nashville that's made all the media. We got to talk a little bit about that. We'll tell you what we know and what's confirmed. Although I'll tell you this right now, we will not, and I'm sure I know Charlie knows this. Just saying this for John's benefit, we will not name the shooter, but we'll tell you what we know right now, and we'll get to all that right after we hear from ACLDN. Right back after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Massad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Gibbons, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tueller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
All right, we are back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Susan, let's go ahead and just get straight into it. And I'm going to tell the people that are watching and listening right now that this happened less than 12 hours ago. And normally my personal policy is I don't talk about mass killers for 72 hours. That gives time for details to get out, get confirmed. We're getting a lot of confirmed details out very early in this one. That's why I decided we'll go ahead, we'll talk about what we know about this tonight. Susan, you want to take that first story?
Police in Nashville say 5 people, including 3 children, are dead after a shooting at a private school on Monday morning. Authorities report that the suspect was engaged by responding officers and was apparently shot and killed at the scene, but not before she was able to turn her gun on students and staff. The Covenant School serves about 200 students in kindergarten through 6th grade. So far, authorities haven't said how the suspect gained access to the school or if they've determined why it was the target. But in the first news conference, police did announce that there were 6 fatalities at the school. According to the local police, 5 officers responded to reports of the shooting at 10:13 a.m. and found the female suspect on the 2nd floor of the school building when they arrived. They engaged her and neutralized the threat at 10:27 a.m. Authorities say the suspect appears to be in her teens and was armed with 2 rifles and a handgun. Police say the suspect gained entrance to the school through a side door, though they haven't said whether the door was locked or what kind of security measures the school has in place.
There was an update later this afternoon, and I'm posting on both Facebook and YouTube the update that I'm looking at here off the New York Post. This again is 72-hour rule. We're only going to be talking about things that are confirmed here. This is a how do I put this? It's a transgender person. The media, I don't know. It's 28 years old. That is absolutely confirmed, although I won't name the person. The person did formerly attend the school, a Christian school, and I'm kind of scanning through. Either Charlie or John, do you guys want to comment here?
So I heard that the one of the guns was an AR pistol, and I saw in some forum that somebody started to ask what an AR pistol was. So somebody was trying to explain them. You know, it's the size of the it's an AR with a short barrel and a pistol grip, but it doesn't have a shoulder stock on it. So I'm not sure how difficult it is to get firearms in Nashville, but yeah, that's what I got.
I'll say this, that and in one of the reports I read, although it's not in front of me, the shooter did have a plan to attack a different school, bypass that school because the security measures were too heavy. So.
Well, if we think about it, if she went to this school as a young boy, she's going to know how to get in and out. You know what I mean? Like, she's going to know where the access points are, and this door's broken and that door's jammed and that kind of stuff. I mean, I know at 28, it's been a while since she's been there, but she knows the layout of the school.
I did read a news report shortly before we went on air that they did say that the shooter gained entry through a locked side door, so she had to shoot her way in. Which I don't know if that means she shot through the glass, shot the lock, but she did she did apparently use one of the firearms to gain entry.
Let me see what we got going. I got to look over here. Yeah. Get this comment up from Big John 410. Quote from a news story: he added the gunman gained entry into the school by shooting through a locked door. So there we go.
So there we go. I mean, so some security measures aren't necessarily security measures, or some security measures can be easily defeated, and someone can still gain access to getting into a place where there's a lot of children to do evil things.
And one more thing, and Charlie, you've been through this training. I do not believe there is a Faster Saves Lives Nashville or Faster Saves Lives Tennessee, but I know that Ohio will train teachers from anywhere. I don't know if Nebraska allows armed teachers or not. But
not yet.
Yeah. Or not Nebraska, but
Tennessee.
Tennessee, yeah. I had Nashville, and all of a sudden I've been talking Nebraska all day today.
Right.
And one hump camels, two hump camels, it just all got jumbled.
I may have looked into the laws a little bit, into schools in Tennessee, and you are not able, I believe even without a permit, you are not able to carry on a school campus. So, you know, it's obviously this school was going to be a gun-free zone. So, easy, slim pickings for somebody that wants to cause some harm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I really think the elephant in the room needs to be, it's a transgender person with mental health issues. And I know we've got friends in the community that that have both of those. No, I'm just kidding. I know
it could be said that I have mental health issues. Come on.
Right, and the reason they call it a spectrum is because it's on the spectrum. But maybe the reason that she wanted to do this was because she was struggling with everything and didn't know what to do. So she figured, let's have a mass shooting. Let's go to a school. Let's go to some place where maybe kids picked on her. Maybe she knew this early on that she didn't really feel like a boy when she was a boy, and maybe the school was the target because she knew how to get around. Maybe the school was a target because that's where people picked on her, and she wanted to take out her aggravation or frustration about that. But I think it's really hard to talk about. Because you don't want to say that people, you don't want to certainly generalize and say that people that are transgender have mental health issues, because I don't think they do. But I think in this case, until we find out more information, maybe they go together.
Yeah, well, let's. And I want to say thank you, Big John 410. He took the cue. XXXX left a manifesto and a map that included a second school to attack.
So transgender or not, this person had some mental health issues, and they wanted to cause an act of violence, and they go through the planning stage, the preparing stage. They go through the fantasy stage of me going through and saying, hey, I'm going to go shoot all these people up, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a live video game, and I'm going to bring in these kinds of guns, and I'm going to take time to buy these guns. I mean, it doesn't say whether or not she had a Tennessee permit, and Tennessee is a permitless carry state. So maybe she passed the background check to purchase these guns legally, which tells us the background check only checks our background. It's not a future check. And the things that we have in play that the folks think are going to stop these things from happening didn't work.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I struggle every time one of these hits the news because nobody wants to see innocent people shot or killed in any other way. We always want to go back and dissect these incidents Monday morning, quarterback them, if you will, and try to figure out why did this happen, what was going on. And again, not to make light of either situation here, but to me, it's kind of like being given a diagnosis of cancer. Well, how did I get cancer? At this point, it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is, what do we do about it, right? And that's where we're going to have more arguments across the country, more news articles, more news programs on TV are going to be talking about, what could have been done, what can we do now. I want to paraphrase, because I can't directly quote Ed Monk. He has, I think he is one of the foremost experts on active shooter scenarios in the nation. And basically what he'll tell you in his presentation, it really comes down to, time and math. At that point, it doesn't matter anymore why this is happening or what happened to lead up to it. We just need to deal with it, and we need to deal with it right away. And unfortunately, we're going to be hearing, we already have heard today, calls to do something. But again, this is where we need to pump the brakes a little bit. We agree this is tragic. Nobody in their right mind would disagree with that. We all want the same thing. We all want this to not happen anymore. But the something that needs to be done, we completely are, on opposite ends of that spectrum as what it should be to prevent this. If, no matter how I got cancer, I don't have cancer, by the way, but if I were told that I had cancer, no matter how that happened, if I was told that there is actually something that I can put into my body that will prevent that from happening again, we'll clear this up this time, we'll treat it, and then there's something that can be done to slow down, completely discourage, and possibly completely prevent cancer from ever coming back to my body. That's what I would be looking for, right? I want to know something that definitely is going to work. Well, again, we're going to disagree on this across the country, but the only two things that have ever been proven to work are either super secure buildings, like a supermax prison, bulletproof walls, bulletproof windows, bulletproof doors, multiple armed guards present, or we just make the potential for the active shooter to not be successful, the potential of a sucking chest wound greater than it ever has been. Those are going to be the two things that are going to work ultimately. But nobody on the other side wants to even consider the things that will work. They'd rather clutch their pearls, wring their hands, and go after the people that aren't committing crimes in the guise of doing something. All the while, the criminals don't get disarmed because they don't follow the laws that would disarm them anyway.
And I want to bring up real quick, last school shooting that got this much attention this quick was Uvalde.
Yes.
And,
which was almost a year ago.
Yeah, and in this instance, when the police showed up, they heard gunfire on the second floor. What did they do? They ran towards the gunfire, and it was over in a few minutes.
Yeah, Tom Knighton just put an article out about that is not what happened in Uvalde almost a year ago. They heard that the murderer had an AR, and they didn't go in with their ARs.
Susan, do you remember? You remember last week's show, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember the quote? And don't obviously make the exact quote, but do you remember the quote that came over the radio that was in that story you read?
It was something along the lines of, he's got an AR.
I think it was "Oh fudge," but or
right,
something like that.
Something like that.
Fudge.
Yeah. The response.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Go, Charlie.
No, I was going to say, Tom Knighton wrote an article about this, and I'm actually I have the article in my busy mail that's going out tomorrow, talking about how the Uvalde police didn't go in because they heard he had an AR and they weren't. I don't know. I mean, In the simple math of things, 15 people with ARs should easily outnumber one person with an AR.
Now, can I be the one to throw the grenade into the room?
Do it.
Again, going back to Ed Monk's presentation, he's done a lot of the research. He can kind of give you now the deconstruction of that event. And if hopefully I don't murder this, because it's been more than 5 minutes since I was there in the room with him. But to my recollection, they did. They went in, they got shot at, and they pulled back, as was their procedure. So a lot of people are giving the police, blaming them entirely for what went on. And I'm not saying that everything was handled perfectly. I am saying that if you know all the details, they're not quite as terrible as what a lot of the news reports have led us to believe. So I would encourage people to reach out to Ed, or look at a little bit deeper at some of that info that came out, because everything wasn't just as cut and dried as cowardice or negligence on the police department's part.
One more comment, and we're going to move on because we've spent a significant amount of time on just this story. Big John 410 again. He says this time, more states need to be arming and training volunteer school employees. Amen is all I can say to that one.
Absolutely. Or at the very least, just don't make schools gun-free zones, and let the legal concealed carriers legally carry concealed.
Yep.
Amen.
All right, Susan, let's talk about North Carolina.
On March 24th, 2023, Governor Roy Cooper, Democrat, of North Carolina vetoed SB 41, which would remove the Jim Crow era requirement to obtain permission from the sheriff to purchase or transfer a pistol in the state. Federal background checks would still be required. Governor Cooper vetoed a similar measure in 2021. Critics of the law have claimed it was used as a means of discrimination to keep black people disarmed. The bill, SB 41, passed with veto-proof majorities in the House and in the Senate. In the House, there are 120 members. 71 of them are Republicans. The Senate has 50 members. 30 of them are Republicans. In North Carolina, 3/5 of each chamber is necessary to override a governor's veto. That's 30 votes in the Senate and 72 votes in the House. Therefore, one Democratic vote is needed in the House to override Governor Roy Cooper's desire to keep the Jim Crow era law in place. Commercial sales of firearms would still be required to be conducted through federally licensed dealers using the FBI National Instant Background Check System, the NICS system. The passage of the bill would remove the ability of sheriffs to delay or deny the sale of pistols. It would also remove some restriction on the carry of concealed handguns in churches and create a firearms safe storage educational initiative.
John, you and I talked about this back on the bullet here just a little bit ago. I love the fact that this is probably going to get overridden and it's going to become law. And just because new show, new audience, I personally, I detest that you have to go to your local sheriff and ask, Mother, may I please buy a handgun? Because it's none of that sheriff's blessed business if you've got one or not.
I completely agree. And as I had mentioned earlier on the bullet, in Nebraska, we have a similar system, loosely similar. We are a shall issue state for that purchase certificate. In order to purchase a handgun in the state of Nebraska, you do have to go either acquire the handgun purchase certificate, which you go to the sheriff's department to get, but they don't issue it. They print it and hand it to you, but it's issued by the state of Nebraska, and it's a shall issue type of a situation. The only alternative is to have your concealed handgun permit, which works as well. Both documents say that you passed a background check. So for the states that have that, it does streamline the purchase process, because with either one of those in my possession, I can walk into any gun show, any gun dealer, even a private sale that requires a transfer, and I don't have to go through a background check on the spot in order to complete that transaction, because that either that card or that little slip of paper in my possession says that it's okay to do this, and no FFL in the state of Nebraska can sell you that handgun without one or the other. So it is nice in that respect to have such a thing that speeds up the process, and dealers at a gun show aren't backlogged with NICS checks, especially in rural parts of the world where cell service may not be great or internet may not be available. So I like that part of it. But as I said before, here it's a shall issue. So if you have to go hat in hand and say, please, sir, I want some more freedom, and get that, from the sheriff and convince them that you need to purchase this thing, then yeah, that's absolutely not okay at all. That's the opposite of freedom.
Charlie, anything you want to say on this one, man?
Absolutely. So we have this Democrat governor in North Carolina that does not want to remove Jim Crow gun control laws. So he wants to keep all these racist laws that we had, and he's not willing to give people safe storage education. How anti-gun can you get? Like, this is crazy talk.
And I mentioned this again. I mentioned this on the bullet as well. The sheriff in the Raleigh area, if you want to get a pistol purchase permit, say that 5 times fast, in his county, you apply, and he sends out for a records check to everywhere, including the VA. And that doesn't matter if you've ever been a member of the armed forces or not. And when the VA doesn't send back records, because obviously if you've never been in the military, they're not going to have any records on you, and you go to the sheriff and say, I applied X number of months ago, he'll just say, I'm waiting on paperwork. That does not exist. He won't tell you that last part, but there are people in Raleigh that wait 18 months and longer for their purchase permit. So
unbelievable. So let's see. We have a legal way to go about doing everything, and we're going to make that not just difficult. We're going to make it timely and impossible. Wonderful.
Yep.
Nobody wants to take away your guns, Charlie. They just want to make it impossible for you to acquire them in the first place.
Right.
Yes. Yes. All right. Let's get some good news in, huh? Susan, let's talk about Kentucky.
On March 15th, 2023, House Bill 153 was sent to Democrat Kentucky Governor Beshear for his signature or veto. The governor may ignore the bill as well. House Bill 153 orders state and Kentucky government employees not to cooperate with federal officers in the enforcement of federal firearms statutes, rules, or regulations which were passed after January 1st, 2021. Such rules are expected to include the new BATFE rules on pistol braces and the new rule on the definition of what is considered a firearm. The bill is only enforceable on Kentucky state employees. It also forbids the expenditure of public funds for the same purposes.
Expenditure of public funds. I haven't discussed that much when I bring up sanctuary cities, counties, states, with Second Amendment sanctuaries. But if the law forbids state funds from being expended for enforcement of federal laws, that means even if the sheriff in your county, even if the city chief of police in your city wants to enforce these federal laws, he can't if the state helped pay for his patrol car. He can't if the city helps to purchase the gas that goes in that patrol car. If the city bought his uniform, guess what? He's going to have to go naked.
Interesting.
Yeah, that would certainly draw some attention.
Wouldn't it?
It's that level 2 Kevlar? No. Yeah, this is interesting. This is interesting. I don't know how things work in Kentucky. If he signs it, if he does not sign it or does not veto it, it says he can ignore the bill. If he ignores the bill, does it get passed regardless? If he ignores it, or does it just get tabled?
I do not know Kentucky's law. I know in South Dakota that would be a pocket veto, which means if the governor does not sign it or veto it and it passes 10 days in South Dakota, it's just considered a veto.
Gotcha.
And then the legislature can come back and try to override that.
Now, I'm reading about. Sorry, I'm reading about the pistol braces, and I've gone into a couple of gun stores recently, and I usually see pistol braces hanging on the racks, and part of me is like, how come it's not like water and eggs where everyone just goes and buys these, or does everyone have one? Because they say there's 40 million of these, and am I the only gun owner that doesn't have a pistol brace? I don't know. Sometimes
you and me
did not have a bump stock before the Trump administration said you couldn't have one, and I don't have a pistol brace either.
So
I didn't have either one.
There's part of me that wants to go into a store that I've never gone into, where they don't know me, they don't know my face, and pay in cash to buy something like this. Not ask for a receipt. And if they ask for my name, I'm going to tell them I'm John Anderson.
You.
So, I don't know. I honestly don't think there's, I don't know if there's 40 million pistol braces out there. Let's put it that way.
There very well could be. I fired an AK and I fired an AR that had them. They were not mine, but I have fired those. That AK with a pistol brace on it, man, that was an experience.
I bet that was a handful, huh?
Yeah, the AR, no big deal.
I will say I did a gungram with an AK. I did the Russian national anthem as a gungram, and I borrowed an AK from a friend. And they're hard to shoot with one hand.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to hold it on your shoulder and shoot, it's not a pretty sight.
All right, let's get this comment in here from CloverTac. He says, I do not have a pistol brace. I've had many SBRs and SBSs before there ever was a thing. So don't really care, never have. Said that, government needs to step off for sure. Realistically, I cannot recall the last time. I'm sure there have been. I'm sure there has never been a 7-Eleven taken down by a 50 cal. And there are California, New Jersey, New York, and a few other states that ban 50 cals. But I'm pretty sure the number of convenience stores and liquor stores taken down with a short-barreled rifle, short-barreled shotgun, or any rifle with a pistol brace, or any pistol with a pistol, whatever, I'm sure those numbers are minuscule. So they're not protecting anybody.
Yeah, I'm sure it's ridiculous. Not to go too far off the reservation here, but I sat through a gun law seminar that the gun owners actually put on back in February, and they were talking about the .88 Magnum that Joe Piscopo used in Johnny Dangerously. Right?
Yes.
They said because of the barrel length on that, it would be considered a rifle. Because of the 18-inch barrel length or something crazy like that.
Over 16 inches, huh?
Yeah, so they would consider that, even though it's a handgun, they would consider it a rifle. And the crazy Massachusetts laws, a firearm is a handgun. So when you're 15, you can get a firearms identification card that does not allow you to have a firearm. So I always say, welcome to the Commonwealth.
You shouldn't hang me on a door hook, Johnny. My mother did that to me once.
Once.
All right. What a brilliant piece of cinematography, by the way. One of my favorite movies ever.
Yeah.
The car chase
I
is
went
my
home-
favorite part of the whole show.
I actually, after he mentioned this, I actually went back and I think I found it on Amazon Prime, maybe. And I watched Johnny Dangerously, so that was good. Good to see a young Michael Keaton and Joe Piscopo.
Yes, absolutely. And the I do not remember the I posted it on Facebook a while back. The bad guy in that movie, the Farging Bastages.
Those were great. Those were great.
All right, let's do this. We've got some more news we got to cover. We've got a break we've got to get to. We're going to step aside right here. We're going to hear from the Complete Combatant. We'll be back in about a minute with some more news. Hang on, everybody. Right back right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
All right, and we are back. This is the does my mic work? Are you guys hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm barely peaking my meter at all. My volume may be a little low. Let me come over here and do one adjustment fast. Oh, come on. There we go. That does look a little better. Okay. Susan, there's a news story that's not in show notes, but you brought up to us in the pre-show, and I wasn't even aware of this. There was a bill last year that almost, and I mean almost, made it through the South Dakota legislature.
Almost.
It did. This year, is that a different story?
It is, and I'm not sure of the whole story. I'm waiting to hear back from a friend of ours here in South Dakota. I can tell you that the bill that was in progress last year that got turned down basically went through. They've been fighting. Jim Canta of South Dakota Game Fish and Parks and our friend here in South Dakota, King Cavalier, have been fighting for the better part of 12 years in one way or another to get a brand new gun range in South Dakota. It's out in the Black Hills. It was just approved. It is a $17 million facility. It will have shooting ranges. It will have a 300-yard shooting area. Let me see. I gotta find all this.
I know they had numerous pistol bays.
Phase. Yep, the first phase. It has long range to 1,200 yards. Has 17 rifle and pistol bays to 300 yards, and it has an entire educational facility, including a staggering collection of taxidermy from all around the world, educational rooms, an office, and a place to check in.
Wow. Educational rooms. When I was going to grade school, the educational room was the principal, and he had this long wooden paddle. And you did not want to go into the educational room.
No.
And it said BOARD.
You were there several times, weren't you?
Exactly, Charlie.
South Dakota believes, along with the DC project, that education is more important than legislation. So this facility will be serving the needs of the shooting and the hunting community, as well as the general public. It's a private/public partnership using funding from Pittman Robertson, South Dakota Game Fish and Parks, private donations, and some taxes in order to make this facility free to the public.
Nice.
Yeah.
They are looking at, I believe at one point in time, they said it was going to be close to 400 acres.
Wow.
So it's going to be just huge. It is just north of I-90, exit 61. It's about 8 miles north there. It's less than 14 miles from the Rapid City Airport. It's 8 miles from 800 motel rooms.
It is. We have a lot of truckers that listen on podcast. If you're a trucker, if you're familiar with where the Loves is on the west side of the state, out by Rapid City, it's straight north of there, just past the Air Force Base. So,
I mean, that's as a guy that lives in occupied territory, hearing that the state wants to put up a public shooting range boggles my mind.
Did you say 17 different bays, Susan?
Yes.
That's awesome.
It's got, let me get back up to the beginning here. Yeah. The long range goes to 1,200 yards. It has 17 rifle and pistol bays up to 300 yards, and the educational facility. That's the first phase. There is another phase where they are going to be bringing in a virtual training bay, and they're going to be bringing in sporting clays on the north end, and then more bays on the north end as well. The south end range, which is what they're working on now, they're looking at a soft opening later this year with a grand opening in the spring of 2024.
My only complaint about this is it is
On the wrong side of the state.
it is 390 miles away from my house.
But that gives us a good excuse to go see our friends in the Black Hills.
And it will be open. There's a family reunion for your family being planned in that general area in 2024.
Yes,
it should be open by then.
Yeah. So once again, I would like to thank Jim Canta from the South Dakota Game Fish and Parks and our friend out in the Black Hills, King Cavalier, for all the work that they have done over the last 12 years to get this thing open and getting in the right direction. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you to the good people in the South Dakota legislature. There's a lot of good stuff that came out this year. I'm hoping for continued advancements of freedom out of the South Dakota legislature in coming years. Although I got to say, this is going a little bit left field, but Susan and my representative from our district, she needs to find a new avocation to do during legislative sessions because she's the sponsor of the red flag law and the safe storage law that thankfully both died a flaming death this year after I went to, and I don't want to say I was the reason, but I did go testify. And in that committee hearing, both of those died a flaming death this year. So,
tell you what, though, Paul, and you know this now too. When you go to your state legislature and you testify either for or against a bill, whichever you want to for a given bill, and it goes the way that you want it to. If you testify against it and it dies in committee, or you testify for it and they pass it out of committee, it does feel very good. It's awesome to say that you had a part in that, because it may not have been entirely because of you, but it definitely was in part because of you and people like you who went to Pierre and testified.
Well, and I think the amount of credit that needs to go for getting that stopped is about that thick. Let me get that in the camera. About that thick. My contribution, probably about that thick. So,
but a contribution nonetheless.
Absolutely. I gotta say, last week when I spoke at this, I had nothing prepared. I didn't take any. I did take notes, but I didn't write anything down that I wanted to say. And to stand up and to give something that's from the gut and from the heart, and try to stick it to them a little bit. It's a rush, man. I sat back down. I'm like, oh man, that was cool. And then we talked around. We talked a little bit afterwards. I'm like, man, that was pretty cool. I think I feel a buzz. I love this.
All right, let's Susan. This is another. We got two more positive stories to cover in news. Let's talk national reciprocity.
You can't turn on the news without hearing of a robbery, shooting, or carjacking in cities across America. Concerned Americans are taking protection into their own hands and increasingly seeking concealed carry permits. Despite an estimated 22 million concealed weapons permits as of 2022, concealed carry reciprocity varies from state to state, leaving license holders unaware of whether their permits are honored when leaving their home state. Thankfully, Senator Thom Tillis, Republican North Carolina, along with 44 of his Senate colleagues, recently introduced the Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act, which would allow individuals with concealed carry permits in their home state to exercise those rights in any other states that allow concealed carry, while still abiding by that state's laws. Make sure you call your Congress critters at 202-224-3121 to encourage them to vote yes.
I do not even know if at this point this has been assigned a committee yet. It was introduced in the Senate. Could it get through the Senate? Maybe. Will it get through the House if it gets there? Definitely. Will Biden sign it unless it's part of a Defense Authorization Act or an omnibus spending bill? Not a chance. It wouldn't hurt for you to call your congressperson, just because I think you should be in touch with them often. They should be reminded of you on a regular basis. Just like if you got a pimple somewhere uncomfortable, every time you sit down, you're reminded of it. They ought to be reminded just as much of you. But at any rate, I like the thought that goes with this, and I just wish it would have been introduced and worked on the first 2 years of the Trump administration.
Yeah, so there's a little part of me that thinks when the Republican had all of the Congress, why didn't they do it then? So,
as I recall, that was at the time, who was Speaker then? Speaker Ryan, right?
Yes.
At the time, Speaker of the House. That was actually about to come up, and they tabled it after the Parkland school shooting. That's why. Go back and double check me out there, but I am 99% positive that after the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting happened, they tabled it indefinitely because they didn't want to appear to be insensitive, I guess, to the families that were hurting there, which I understand that, but at the same time that's still we could have had so much accomplished in those 2 years, and they absolutely did nothing.
Well, and another part of it was they were all about those first 2 years of Trump. They were all about repealing Obamacare, and look how far that got.
Well, they never expected that to happen in the first place. They didn't expect Trump to win, so the Republicans in Congress didn't have a plan to put into place instead of Obamacare.
Yeah.
And then when Trump won, they were caught figuratively speaking, with their pants down. And again, nothing came of that either.
Yep, you're right. And I absolutely 100% agree with Big John 410. Too many rhinos. Or maybe we should change that to linos, because a lot of Republicans are now identifying as libertarian or libertarian leaning. And not so much if you look at their voting record.
Yeah.
I remember I used to listen to this guy back in the late 90s who was a libertine is what he called himself. And he said the difference between a Republican and a libertarian is the libertarians want to smoke pot. He's like, otherwise they're kind of the same, you know?
And a lot of them are pro-choice when it comes to abortion.
Yeah.
They don't believe in I don't know. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. Don't get me started.
We're not. And just real briefly, to clarify where I stand, I consider myself a small L libertarian, and I am a member of the Republican Party. I will be probably for the rest of my life, at least until there's a serious libertarian candidate for South Dakota legislature. How do I put this? Most Republicans are pro-death penalty. I'm absolutely against it. Most libertarians are open border. I'm not. Most Republicans are bad. Drugs, bad. Marijuana, bad. All drugs, bad. I don't give a darn. My entire political stance is let me do what I do, and I'll leave you alone to do what you do.
Staying with that theme real quick, I got a copy of Barry Goldwater's Conscience of a Conservative that he wrote in the mid-'60s, and there were 3 words he said that I absolutely loved, and I read this book 15 years ago. It was maximum individual freedom. And I felt that. I'm like, that is what I want right there. And that's what I'm like, I got to remember that phrase. Maximum individual freedom.
Absolutely. 110%. All right, I'm looking down at Susan, and she's not quite ready to go. She had to take care of dogs. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take this last one. Native Americans living...
Hang on.
Oh.
I'll talk to you later.
All right.
Native Americans... You ready?
Go.
Native Americans living on tribal land would have an easier time buying firearms under a new bipartisan bill introduced in the House on Wednesday. Small Business Caucus Chairman Representative Dusty Johnson, Republican South Dakota, yay, is reviving his effort from the previous Congress to expand the language on identification requirements for gun purchases. Under current regulations, tribal IDs are not recognized as a permissible form of identification for those purchases, even though they include most of the same information as a DMV-issued driver's license. Johnson and Republican Representative Mary Peltola, Democrat Alaska, the first Alaskan Native elected to Congress, are jointly sponsoring the legislation.
On this one, this will not just benefit Native Americans. There's a provision in here that would allow P.O. boxes to be used on Form 4473. And anybody that lives in an RV full-time, that'll help them out tremendously. It'll allow people who have APOs and FPOs, are members of our military, to use those on the 4473. It'll help members of our military out tremendously. This is a good bill all the way around. Again, House, definitely. Senate, maybe. Biden, not a ghost of a chance. Either Charlie or John, you guys want to chime in?
I've been saying, go ahead.
I was just going to say, again, let's go back to that maximum. What was that? Maximum individual freedom?
Maximum individual freedom.
So again, if someone lives their entire life, they reside on a reservation, and their tribal ID is what they have,
All right. Charlie?
I have felt this way since I was in high school. I have lived in the United States my entire life, and up until my early 20s, when I took a couple trips to Europe, I've only lived in the United States. Therefore, America is my native country. I am a Native American.
Yes. As am I.
So I know that doesn't fly well with people, but I'm like, words mean things. Native means this is where you're from. I'm from here. I'm a Native American.
What tribe am I from? I'm from tribe Lathrop. That's the tribe I'm from.
There we go.
What was that line from Lonesome Dove that Tommy Lee Jones said as Woodrow Call? He said, "I'm as American as the next man, I reckon."
Yeah, I've had some. This is where, like, legit. This is where it came from for me. I had one of my older sister went and did a 23andMe or Ancestry.com, whatever it was, and found out that we have 7 or 8 generations that have lived here. So I can't say that I'm from somewhere else if I've never been there and I wasn't born there. And this is the only place that I've lived. So I can't say that I'm, whatever, French, English, German, Swiss. Like, that doesn't, no, I don't go for that, man.
But did you find out that you're 1/1064th indigenous person?
I am not 1064th. Is that what it is? Yeah. I didn't
believe
find
that's
that out.
what it is.
I think it's more. I think I might be more than that. Like,
So you're more of an actual Native American than is Elizabeth Warren, is what you're saying.
yes, but it's not enough to get any casino money. So that's what I really know.
But you could teach a class at, what is it, Harvard, as an indigenous professor?
Okay.
All right.
As they watch these videos and see how pale I am, I don't think they'll buy it.
I am finally just returning to my normal shade after coming back sunburned. So I took the hat off for 3 minutes when I was down on vacation, and I lobsterfied, man. So.
Oh yeah, and you were there. It's been a while too. It's been a few weeks that you've been back.
Yeah, absolutely. I finally stopped peeling the other day. Let's do this. Let's go to our final break. When we come back, we're going to do a DGU segment, and we're going to wrap the show up. We'll do that all in one segment. When we come back, first we're going to hear from JPFO, and we'll be right back right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. JPFO.org.
And we are back. This is the final segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. As we get into our defensive gun use segment, I need to let you know these discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers. Actually, on this screen, all of us are trainers. But this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information and education only, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Looking down, I'm going to stall for just a few more seconds as Susan gets her headset on, leans forward, and starts reading about the DGUs we have coming up. And Susan, are you ready to talk about Detroit, Michigan?
Just before 10 p.m., the Detroit Police Shot Spotter detected 3 gunshots near Kerman's Delicatessen in Detroit. One man approached responding police officers with his hands over his head and informed them he had a concealed pistol license. He told them he had fired a shot in self-defense while being robbed outside the store. He said he and his friend had gone to the store and noticed an old man and a younger man talking outside. The younger man was wearing a lion's jacket and a ski mask. The man and his friend went inside the store, and the older man followed them inside. When they left the store and headed to their car, the younger man followed them. He then proceeded to start an argument with the pair. He pulled a gun and threatened to kill the CPL holder's friend if he didn't give up everything he had. He handed over his wallet. While holding the handgun in one hand, the thug started to pat the man down. While he was doing that, the good guy pulled his gun and fired a shot. Detroit PD found the bad guy lying on the ground to the west of the store with a gunshot wound to his chest. His gun was nearby and appeared to have suffered a malfunction. The man's wallet was found among the suspect's belongings. Surveillance video confirms the victim's story. The suspect had a criminal history from 2014 and had been sentenced to 5 to 15 years in prison. Surprise, surprise, he was unlawfully possessing a firearm.
And gee, if he'd have even done 10 years of that 15-year prison sentence, he wouldn't have been out. So this comes up often in training. Take your turn. Don't draw on a drawn handgun. Don't do anything that is silly like that. Sounds like this guy did the right moves at the right times, and thankfully everything worked out. John, when you're doing your training, are you having people shoot hostage targets? Because this is very close to a hostage target situation.
Most of what I offer doesn't involve going that far yet. Eventually I'll be adding a few other things to my repertoire. For the time being, I guess I'm what would be called a gateway trainer. So if you want to learn how to do the high-speed, low-drag, rolling somersaults and coming up firing and, the operator stuff, I'm not the guy. But if you want to learn the fundamentals, learn how to aim your firearm, how to breathe, hold it, all that kind of stuff, then yeah, I'll get you ready for that, so that then you can go seek out those other trainers and find somebody to take you up to that next level. So I don't think I'll ever do that part, but yeah, absolutely, that is something that if somebody comes to me and wants to do some how do I say it, some custom tailored training specifically to them and not in a formal class, absolutely, that's one of the things that needs to be worked on. I've got some targets like that myself, just to even keep myself, I guess, tuned up a little bit there.
And Charlie, do you teach them to draw and fire out of a triple sow cow with a 1.5 twist?
Well, yeah, other than John, doesn't everybody? No, everything that I do is it's all basic gun safety stuff for people that are brand new. I actually had a lady one time ask me, I'm going to say this was probably in 2020. I had 5 or 6 people in a class, and there was a lady that she seemed a little aggravated that I wasn't teaching a live fire class. And a couple hours into it, when we're doing the loading and unloading, somebody's got their finger on a trigger. Somebody kind of, gestures around with the gun in their hand. My line is always, when they're not paying attention, they're trying to do everything. And when they laser me with a gun, I'm always like, point the gun right at the instructor, and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "That's okay. We're in a controlled environment. We don't have live ammunition. It's okay. You need to learn how to do this." At the shooting range, I'd pull my gun on you. So I just want you to know this. just be aware. So this lady said to me, she's like, "Oh my gosh, now I see why it's, like I said, I wouldn't have 8 people in a classroom with me at the shooting range all by myself. I'd have a smaller group of people, but she's like, okay, I think I get it now. Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, I've got a class that is designed specifically for women, and I'll take usually 10 at a time in class, but when it comes time to do the live fire, I'm out there at the range all day long because it's one-on-one. It's an hour at a time with each specific student. They get my undivided attention. I have their undivided attention, and then when they're done, the next person comes along, and I repeat as necessary. But it's especially for those beginners, for that very, very first intro class, absolutely on the range. I think one-on-one is one-on-two would be the absolute most I would ever do, just for that same reason, just to keep everybody safe.
We haven't done this in several years. I don't know if we will do this or not. If you want it done, get a hold of Susan on Facebook or send her an email. We had at one point Polite Society Podcast T-shirts made up. And on the back, because we were doing a lot of classes at the time, we have across the top on the back, not a safe direction, going off the third of Colonel Cooper's 4 rules. Always keep your firearm pointed at a safe direction. So
right, and it didn't have like a hat and a mustache on it or something.
Yeah, it was a Mr. Peanut type thing, right, Susan?
Yeah, I'm looking for a picture. If I can find one, I'll send it to you so you can put it up.
Yeah,
that is so cool.
I'm not wearing my I'm wearing a Second Amendment Foundation. I'm wearing a Second Amendment Foundation T-shirt right now. I'm not wearing my Polite Society Podcast T-shirt, but yeah,
I don't have it handy, but I do have a patch that says "Don't shoot the range officer." It goes kind of right along with that.
Nice.
I need one that says "Don't shoot the instructor."
Yeah, it's like legit. Point the gun at the instructor. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's okay. It's okay.
Back to this DGU. One thing that I like that this guy did. When the police were showing up, he was there, hands over his head, pistol secured, and said, officers, I was robbed, I was threatened, I had to shoot myself in self-defense, I had to shoot someone else in self-defense, and explain everything went on. Stayed there, cooperated. That's another thing this guy did absolutely right.
So I'm as the guy that carries a wheel gun. It appears that the bad guy's gun may have suffered a malfunction. Could have been a different story if we had a revolver, right? Maybe. Who knows?
There are
now bad guys aren't always known.
You can get a jammed cylinder, dude.
Bad guys aren't always known for being gun guys, and so I mean, how many stories have we heard from a would-be criminal who the reason the gun malfunctioned was they had the wrong ammo for it, or something to that effect, right? So it's hard telling.
I took a 357 out to Front Sight in 2004 maybe, and there's with revolvers there's a Type 1 malfunction. It's a failure to fire. So there was nothing else that applied to me for malfunctions. Somehow I ended up with a revolver case underneath the ejector star. And I'm like, I have a Type 2 malfunction here. I'm not sure what to do.
All right, before the bathroom jokes come out, let's go ahead.
I know, right?
Let's go ahead to our next one. Susan, let's talk about Georgia.
At approximately 6:30 p.m., the would-be robber walked into the Ideal Mart, acting as a customer purchasing an energy drink. His wife waited in the car parked outside. Also in the store at the time was a store clerk, 2 customers, and a third was at the gas pumps. After getting the drink, he pulled a pair of women's panties from around his neck and pointed a .45 caliber pistol at the head of the clerk and demanded money. Wow. One customer, legally carrying a concealed pistol, produced his gun and intervened in the robbery. The second customer went out to his vehicle and after grabbing his pistol, returned to assist the first customer. Why was he not pogoing? The customer at the gas pump, who was also armed, entered the store as the suspect attempted to leave. The first customer, seeing the suspect disarmed, told the others not to shoot. At this time, law enforcement arrived. One officer encountered the suspect, still attempting to leave, and verbally instructed to stop and get down. When he ignored the command, the officer deployed his taser and took the suspect into custody. Other officers arriving on the scene took the wife into custody. The suspect has been charged with armed robbery, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. He and his wife are being held without bond.
Women's, now we're not talking pantyhose, we're talking panties.
I have so many questions now.
I just hope there
So
wasn't a
the first
racing stripe
the first takeaway from this is those people that drink the energy drinks are not to be trusted, right? Is that, can we all agree on that? You're just a rock star, Paul.
Is coffee an energy drink? Are we expanding
I've got my
definition?
coffee maker right over there, so.
All right, there we go.
All right, so I'm sorry. I know that it's a serious topic, but I can't get past this women's panties from around his neck. If he's using it as some sort of a face mask because he has no handkerchiefs in the house, I mean, at what point do you not realize that they've already seen your face? So, I mean, go in, buy the energy drink, then cover your face and try to rob the place. They'll never know who it was. I just, this person seems like maybe not the sharpest crayon on the Christmas tree.
If these are thong back panties, putting them over your head's not really going to help.
Really big eye holes to look through.
Right? Oh my gosh. This is, I mean, yeah. This is ridiculous. So, you know, panties could be a new pogo.
Panties on, gun on.
Yes.
It's
I
possible.
suppose if you're wearing
and
it,
honestly,
that
I mean,
would work, but yeah.
For all the would-be criminals out there, don't use the actual panties. Get the sheer energy pantyhose. They don't leave your face tired at the end of the day.
Right? And it takes a couple of years off with all the compressed skin.
Right? No, I mean, anybody who's going to do this clearly isn't a Rhodes Scholar to begin with. But
right. They're
again, so many questions.
They're not the brightest bulb in the drawer.
Right.
So thinking about this here, the guy that has pogo, I remember when I went down to Georgia to film some shows. I was asking Brian and Shelley Hill, I'm like, so what's the story with open carry here? And they said you can open carry without a permit in Georgia. And they said, but once you get in your car, they consider that concealed carry, and if you don't have a permit, you can't concealed carry in Georgia. So if he was open carrying and got in his car, put the gun possibly in a secure area, and then went about driving, got to the gas station, something happened, okay, maybe he should go back and, grab his gun from the car. Not that it's an excuse, but he might have been trying to do the best he can to pay attention to what the laws are.
Well, and it doesn't say that the second person was legally a concealed carrier, so that could very well be what it was. He had a firearm in the vehicle. He was not permitted to carry it concealed on his person, maybe. So maybe he just went and got his quote unquote truck gun.
Right.
Well, let's do this. We are down at. I told John I'd only keep him for a maximum of 90 minutes. That gives us 20 seconds to get out of here. That's not going to happen.
Well, you were wrong. Hey, Paul, check
Yes.
check your messages quick. Take the second picture I sent you. Facebook.
Gotcha. Okay. Let me. It's going to take me just a. Can you, Susan? Can you text that to me instead?
Yes.
That's faster. While we're waiting for that all to transpire, and for me to get pictures and maybe get them into broadcast software and all that, Charlie, what's been going on in your world? It's been 2 weeks since you've been in the air, man. You've got to put some riding shotguns out, maybe a writing shotgun. Anything else you want to plug?
It is a little bit of everything. So tomorrow is a big day in the life of the Stagecoach. Tomorrow is the writing episode with Cam Edwards. I used to think that Farmville was not a real town, but I did see it on the map, and I went to Farmville and interviewed Cam Edwards, had him in the car, went out for lunch, had a great time with him. So that's coming out tomorrow at 8:30 on YouTube and on podcast form. So if anyone subscribes to either of those, be looking for those at 8:30 in the morning. The latest Armed Lifestyle magazine is out, and Yehuda Reamer is the person that I feature in the article for that. You can find that at, armedlifestylemagazine.com, I think. It's a free resource. There's a lot of really good articles in there this month. And the article that I wrote about the gun law listening tour ended up on the news2a.com website, which is a new website that's been going around for a couple of months, and they're trying to grow their base. And John Petrolino put them in touch with me, or put me in touch with them, and he kind of parlayed all that to make it happen. So I cranked out an article last week, and like I said, you can find that on news2a.com. That is what's been happening with me, just all my keeping up.
All right, John, I'm going to go to you next, man. Anything you want to plug? Of course, plug your show, but anything else you want to plug, man?
Oh, sure. So yeah, we'll start off with that. My show is called the Get Off My Lawn podcast. As we mentioned earlier, we go live every Wednesday night now at 8 p.m. Central Time, and tune in to, I call it the best show that nobody's watching. So I would really love it if all of you out there listening and watching would join us Wednesday night, and maybe prove me wrong here. But if you follow Sandhills Media on Facebook, you get at no extra cost for the free membership. You get all the fun memes that I post, some of my own musings, and then just some great stuff that I find and I share as well along the way. You can find Sandhills Media on YouTube as well. Every week we go live on the Get Off My Lawn podcast. We go live on Facebook, YouTube, and now Rumble.com. And I'm really trying to grow the presence over there on Rumble. It's really fun to be there. They don't put a lot of restrictions on what somebody can post, as long as you're not breaking any laws and you're not showing nudity or pornographic material. Then they're kind of a live and let live, the way that we all wish the world was. You do your thing. If you're not hurting anybody, you're not breaking any laws, then keep doing your thing. Power to you. So I would love it if people would go to Rumble.com and search Sandhills Media and subscribe over there as well. Of course, if you are feeling very generous and you really want to get in the fight for the Second Amendment in Nebraska, then go to nebraskafirearms.org and become a member of NFOA. That also is free to join. Non-residents are welcome to be associate members, but the push is on to get permitless carry passed here in my state, and we still have the potential to be number 26. We'll just have to see how fast we can get our legislature to move.
Yeah, and I certainly hope that happens. Nebraska should be the first in the list of the second half of the nation. So,
yeah, we're never the first at anything, but we have a chance to be the first of the second half. And so, that first touchdown after halftime is worth quite a bit too, right?
It is, absolutely is. Let me get this comment up here real quick. Gun Websites says News2A, getting in on the plugging. News2A is a brand new Second Amendment news website and gives the address www.news2a.com. And on our way out the door, I want to go ahead and the what Susan was telling me over the air, the Not a Safe Direction t-shirt, I'm going to go ahead and that is it. That's actually taken at a Masada Yub group training course that was in Sioux Falls. I believe that was not the most recent, but one of the ones before that. So that's one of our T-shirts for the Polite Society podcast right there. So, or the back of it, anyway. I do not know if there would be I don't know if there would be a market to make another run of those. We have to make like 20 or 25 shirts to make it break even. So if one were to happen, if we get close to 20 or 25, whatever the break even number is, we haven't done it in so long I don't even remember. But if we get close, I'll start making announcements, and if you want one, we'll get some printed up. And let me get another plug up here. Gun Websites is just right on it today. Pete says, join Charlie as he drives around the coolest people. RidingShotgunWithCharlie.com.
Thank you very much, G Webs. Thank you very much. I owe you a phone call as well.
You need to get Pete
Now,
in the shotgun seat, man.
I'll be impressed if you get Pete on your show and he shows his visage
Shows his
on.
face. Yes.
You're gonna. I bet you if you offered to spend the time editing and pixelate him, I bet you he would agree to it.
Oh my gosh. We could drive at night.
Yeah.
Right? That might be
Careful
kind of
of what
fun.
parts of town you
Wearing
drive to.
sunglasses.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Maybe
there we go.
if he just pulls out some women's underwear and puts them on his head or something.
Yeah, that'll do it.
On that note, I think it would be a good time for me to say, please do come join me. If you're a podcast listener, 5 p.m. Central Time, the only time zone that matters. The rest of this week, Tuesday through Friday, for the Bullet. If you also come join us on Saturday, when Patrick Collins, the gun foodie, is going to be joining me for the Saturday version of the Bullet, the weekend edition, where we have a little bit more time and we dig deeply into the stories of the week. So Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Central Time, Saturday, noon Central Time. And I think that's going to go ahead and we're going to do it. We're going to shut it down for today. Thanks again for watching, everybody. And as soon as I get myself back to show notes,
How many
that wraps
times?
up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. So for Amy, Dana, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, Carrie, and Rob,
And John.
Until the next time,
Stay safe.
be aware.
and we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, that is the end of the recorded session. I'm going to go ahead. I'm not going to spend hardly any time today on a post session. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I got to get this up, though. Before we cut the feed, I got to get this up. Pete's on the topic of wearing panties over his head. On that note, so, all right. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Come join me tomorrow, 5 p.m. Central Time, and I'm going to go ahead and